Okay, so good morning, everyone. What I want to look at today is one specifically to focus on one pasuk, and that's the pasuk that when Yaakov engages with Yitzchak after he's been told by his mother that he must go and he must listen and do whatever she tells him to do, and we can understand that it's something that he doesn't like at all. It's not something that's in his nature to this kind of subterfuge or something of that nature. And what he does is that he tries to avoid telling lies. He tries to avoid telling who he is. So when it says Vayigash Yaakov el Yitzchak Aviv Vayemushehu, that Yaakov comes closer to his father, and his father feels him. He says the voice is the voice of Yaakov, and the hands are the hands of Esav, and we know that that's fundamental, and that really is what it's all about. As we go forward, that there will always be the power of Am Yisrael is in the call, is in the voice, and the power of Esav is in the yadayim, is in the hands. So Yaakov, and the way they describe that is Yaakov is the ethereal, is the tefillah. That's where our power is, and Esav is the power in the hands. V'loi kiru ki hayu yadav kidei Esav achiv seirot v'yavarcheu. And he didn't recognize that it was Yaakov, even though the voice was the voice of Yaakov, because his hands, what he felt was with the hairy hands of his brother Esav, and he gives him a brocha. And then he says, Vayomer ataze b'ni Esav, Vayomer ani. He says, are you really my son Esav? And his response is, Yaakov's response is, Ani, I am. So there already we can see he's trying to avoid telling the lie. Vayomer hagisha li v'ochalami tzei b'ni. He said, come, I want to eat from that which you've brought me, leman tevarecha nafshi, in order that I can give you a brocha. But not just some brocha, but it's clear that it says vayevarechehu, that he gave him a brocha earlier on. So the question was, what is the brocha that he gave earlier on that now he needs to feel to eat the food that he brought him? So it would seem to be just a basic brocha that a parent gives to a child. Everything should be well with you, and then he brings him the food that he asked him to bring him, and Yaakov is bringing what especially made wonderful food that his mother made in order to deceive Yitzchak, and there's going to be something special about that brocha. Vayagesh lo vayachal, and he brings it to him. Vayachal, and he eats it. Vayave lo yain vayesh, and also not only that, he brings him wine to drink. And why is it that he brought him wine to drink? Nowhere do we find that he was asked to bring him wine. Nowhere do we find wine is mentioned at all. So the Chizkuni jumps on this and he says, "Shayain ma'arvev katzat da'ato shel Adam, v'lo yedaktek imhu Esav imlo." Because what wine does is, it throws us a little bit. It throws our judgment off a little bit, and because it throws our judgment off a little bit, he said that he brought it to him in order that he wouldn't be so specific in all the specific nuances of who is Yaakov and who is Esav, in order that he wouldn't be caught out. He says to him, come close to me and kiss me. Now remember, Yitzchak doesn't have eyesight, so he's relying on all his other senses. So he's relying on his sense of touch. His sense of touch is given that it's Esav. His sense of hearing is saying that it's Yaakov. And all he's really got left now is his sense of taste and his sense of smell. Well, his sense of taste, delicious. This is the food that Esav brings me. This is the stuff I like. And all he's got left now really is that sense of smell. And Vayomer elav Yitzchak aviv gashani yishkali b'ni, come and kiss me, my son. Vayigash vayishach lo, and he comes close to him and he gives him a kiss. Vayarach edrech begadav vayevarcheyu, and he smelt the smell of begadav, of his clothes. Vayevarcheyu, and he gives him a brocha. Vayomer, and he said, Ra'ei reach b'ni kereach sadeh asher berecho Adonai. And he said, Ra'ei, see that the smell, the aroma of my son is like the aroma of the field, asher baruch Hashem, in which Hashem has blessed him with. Now, so having got that this is really seems to be, he's now covered all his senses. Because the next thing is that he starts giving him the whole long bracha of Vayiten Lecha. Now, understand, Rashi says on this pasuk, Vayarach, he says, I don't understand. Is there no worse smell than fleece, old fleece of sheep? He says, no, we understand that this fleece were not just some fleece. This was a special fleece that had within it the reach, the smell of Gan Eden. And therefore he says that I can smell it, and it's a reach that Hashem blesses with Reach Sadeh Asher Baruch Hashem Shenatan Bo Reach Tov V'zeh Tsadeh Tapuchim. So it gives it a beautiful smell. And what is that? That's the field of the tapuchim, the field of the apples. Now, what has that got to do with anything? The field of the apples. Why does Rashi bring that in? We know that that in Shir Hashirim it says Tachat Tapuach or Ticha, that under the apple trees, that's the way we translate Tapuach, is or Ticha, there was an arousal, and all this is a throwback to the beautiful smells and the beautiful process that happens with the later on in history with the Benot Yisrael, with the Jewish women who seduced their husbands in the most difficult time in Mitzrayim in order to have children. Where was that done? In the apple orchards. So there's a whole story that's happening here where there's this rayach, this beautiful smell that happens from the apple orchards, because that is bringing things much more up to the fore. But what's very interesting and important to understand is this whole process that happens. That Vayarach Edrech Bagadav Shayaragil Lahariach, says the Chizkuni. It's the normal smell that he always smells. Vayomer Ereach Bani Misheriach Reach Bagadim Amar Ein Kan Safek. Once he smelt, he said, "There's no doubt. There's no doubt at all that this must be the person that I have to give the bracha to." Kareach Hasadeh, we understand that these clothes were somehow imbued with the smell of the fields of Gan Eden. Asher Baruch Hu Hashem. So he says there, Asher Baruch Hu Hashem, that Hashem has blessed me. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has blessed this child that is wearing these clothes with the blessings of the field, and then he'll go on to bless them. But there's an amazing idea that I wanted to share with you, and that is, we know that on an Erev Shabbos, we say Bamei Madlikin, and in Bamei Madlikin there is this term Bagadav that comes out. And the term, it says, Adam lemashmish bagadav erev Shabbos im chashecha, that a person has an obligation to check their clothes erev Shabbos, before Shabbos, im chashecha, when it gets dark. What's the on a simple halachic level? The whole point is that we check our clothes so that we're not carrying anything. We live in a world of an Eruv, so we're not so sensitive to this. But if we didn't have an Eruv, I remember when we lived in Cape Town, we didn't have an Eruv for many years. And you said you got to make sure there's nothing in your pockets. But size is a malacha. It's the same as writing, starting a fire. They're all malacha. So one has to be very careful. And comes along there, it says, says it's a very important halacha in Shabbos. But all the halachas in Shabbos are important. So if all the halachas in Shabbos are important, so why does it specify us to say that Chav Adam Mashvish Bagadav Erev Shabbos Im Chashecha, that you have to check your Bagadim Erev Shabbos Im Chashecha? And there, Chazal learn out a very important idea. Chazal say, Al Tikrei Bagadav, don't say Bagadav, Ela Bogdav. That's a Hasidic way of learning. What's Bogdav? Bogdav means deceit, rebellion. So therefore, if that's the case, then we can read it as Chayav Adam, that a person has an obligation, the mashmesh bogdav, the person has to check the things that he did during the week that were not appropriate. Erev Shabbos im chashecha. Before Shabbos, before you go into the Kedusha, the holiness of Shabbos, that a person should check that which they did during the week and see, was there anything that went against the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Shema yishkach v'yetzeh, because maybe we'll forget, and we'll go v'yetzeh, we'll leave from the week and the weekly misdoing into Shabbos, the Kedusha, and we'll take this misdoing into Shabbos, and therefore, says the Slonim Rebbe, it's a time for us to do tshuva, Erev Shabbos im chashecha. But I think we can use it here as well, because I saw, and I can't find where it was, but I saw something that it seemed to be quite clear to Yitzchak, that this person that was there, who was standing in front of him, who was going to give the bracha is no longer a pure Esav, and he's no longer a pure Yaakov. He's a combination of the two. He's the Kol Yaakov, the Yadayim Yadai Esav. He's got the essence, the neshama of Yaakov, which has to drive him, but he also has to have the drive, the physical drive of Esav. And that person is the one who's going to get the bracha from him. So therefore, I think what we could say here, Vayigash Yishak Lo, that he brings him, he kisses him, Vayarach is Reach Bogdav. He smells that this person is Yaakov. But on him is the Reach of Bogdav. On him is the smell of the positive deceit. Understanding now all of a sudden that Yaakov understood that he couldn't just sit in the tent. He couldn't just be there on this high spiritual level, completely divorced from the world. He needed to involve himself in the physical world, because he was ultimately going to be the father of the Jewish people. And when he smelt that sense of understanding that it's not always just pure, the sitting on a mountain, being alone, but one has to engage in the world. He smelt bogadav, vayevarcheu. That's where the bracha comes from. The bracha comes from the understanding that the son Yaakov, who he loved so much, though the Torah never tells us, but he loved him, obviously, the Torah is telling us, because he was the person who carried everything that was Avram Avinu. Esav he thought would be the person that would carry on a whole different way of being able to elevate the physical world. Here he saw that wouldn't be Esav, but it would be the Kol Yaakov that would elevate the physical world. And so he smells the Reach Bogdav, the Reach of that deceit that is brought about. He gives him a bracha and he says, Vayomer Ra'ei, look, Reach B'ni, you don't look at the smell of a person, you smell the smell of a person. Ra'ei Reach B'ni, look at the smell of my son. Is like the smell of the field that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that Hashem has blessed him with. What is the field? And if you remember, that's where Rivka met Yitzchak. Rivka met Yitzchak in the Sadeh. The Sadeh for Yitzchak is a powerful place, because it's not a place just simply of hunting. It's a place of great, place in which there can be great spiritual connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But to have that spiritual connection, you have to have the call of Yaakov. So let's stop there for today. And Bezrat Hashem,